On this week's episode of Nosebleed Radio, football is back. Kind of. We talk about the Hall of Fame game, and we have some college football headlines. Urban Meyer finds himself in a little bit of hot water. Have some NBA news. Draymond Green seems to like to get his name in the news. We'll go to the MLB, where the Mets are a bad baseball team. We'll expand on that later, and we have a little bit of trade deadline talk. We interview the voice of Northern Missouri sports, Tom Johnson. I sit down and talk with him about how he got into the media industry and his favorite teams in Minnesota. All that and much more on this week's Nosebleed Radio. So without further ado, let's roll the music.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Welcome to Nosebleed Radio, presented by Paisans Pizzeria in Omaha. Here's your host, Tucker Franklin.
What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 23 of Nosebleed Radio, presented by Paisans Pizzeria. You may notice our new intro, done by Tom Johnson. We'll have him on later in the podcast. Big thanks to Paisans Pizzeria for now presenting you Nosebleed knowledge. We'll go ahead and start off with our famous number 23s. Shane, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I had a really hard time with this one. I don't know if you guys have looked around. There are not very many good athletes who wore the number 23. A few no-namers I picked up on were this guy from Chicago, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James out of Cleveland. Akron. I guess he's a little suburb in Cleveland. So up-and-comers to look for, I guess. So keep an eye on them in the future here. Satire.
All right, KB, what do you got for us?
You guys did not think that was funny at all. I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, no. I wasn't buying it.
The only person you ever got to impress is yourself. So.
And women.
Motivational words of wisdom. Women dig confidence. And if you're confident in yourself, if you believe in yourself, women will follow.
Let's just ditch the sports aspect of this and just talk the straight motivational podcast. We're going to have one motivational episode.
This one.
Yeah.
All right.
Tell me your 23s.
Well, my 23s are the pride of St. Louis, David Freese. He was a hometown hero, and he's the one that hit the big home run, big World Series MVP in 2011. Great guy for the city of St. Louis, and now he's tearing it up in Pittsburgh. And my second number 23 is a guy who makes music now. His name is Mike Stud, but when he was a pitcher at Duke University, he was number 23.
Mike Seander. He's a good pitcher, too, from what I understand. He had some good stats.
Yeah,
he was All-American his freshman year, wasn't he?
Yep, All-American. I was listening to a podcast today, and he said that he was probably good enough to go in, early rounds, probably day 1 or 2.
Yeah, but he blew out his elbow, sophomore year? Junior year?
Yeah, his UCL. Had to get the old...
Tommy John?
Had to get the old TJ. The old TJ bites again.
But now he's sloppy TJ, from what I heard. Didn't go very well.
But now he's...
Big mess.
But now he's making music,
Yeah, that's what you do if you aren't able to pitch in the MLB. You just become a very famous rapper.
Did they finish the TJ?
Rappist.
Toby, what do you have for your number 23s?
Well, in honor of football being back tonight and the Bears being on, I picked Devin Hester, the greatest return man of all time. And then I went the basketball route as well. I went with Anthony Davis, and up becoming 23, sick unibrow. Finished third in MVP voting. It's pretty dope. So those are my 23s.
So Kieran had a guy who played at Duke, and you had a guy who shit on Duke on a single punt return that will be replayed for all of history.
Yeah, Duke has to stop kicking balls to Miami in general. There's no more kickoffs or punts or anything. If they're playing the Hurricanes, everything's an onside, or go for it on every fourth down.
Or just kick it straight out of bounds.
I don't even trust field goals or extra points.
Not after that Auburn-Alabama game.
Can't trust it.
See, nope. Special teams, not so special at Duke.
Or maybe they are.
I'll go ahead and talk about my number 23s. Since I'm the last one. My number 23 is Nori Aoki when he played for the Kansas City Royals. Shout out Nori Aoki. Remember when he got hit in the balls with a ball? That was funny.
Wasn't that because didn't he overrun it?
Yeah, he slid. Well, he slid for it and it just hit him right in the crotch.
Did he slide with his crotch towards home plate?
Where's the ball? He's probably sliding to cut it off.
It was a foul ball.
Fielding one in foul territory.
Yeah, and
You guys remember when Carl Crawford got hit in the nuts with that pickoff?
yeah, I do remember that actually. People get hit in the nuts. It's still funny.
Yeah. And who was it for the Indians? Was it last year or 2 years ago that got hit? Was it Juan Uribe?
Yeah, I think so.
He just got smoked in the nuts.
Sometimes when I need a good laugh, I will still YouTube videos of people getting hit in the balls.
I think that's something we'll do till the day we die, because that's never not funny.
Oh, it's always funny. Unless you're the person getting... Actually, no. I still think sometimes when I get hit in the nuts, it's
Even
funny.
if I get hit in the nut, yeah. I still laugh.
Hey, this season, I took a foul ball off the nuts.
Yeah.
It really hurt, but I laughed afterwards.
I don't know. Yeah, whenever I get hit in the nuts, I'm laughing. I'm like, oh man, this sucks.
You're
a
laughing.
lot.
You're
It's
laughing
a really
because
gaspy, wheezy laugh, but it's a laugh.
you know it's funny. It's funny, but it just hurts so bad.
Yeah.
Because you're laughing because you're like, man, that was funny, but it hurts.
All right, that was talking nut shots.
I got a couple more 23s. As you guys may know,
Okay.
I'm a big Knicks fan now. I like to go Quentin Richardson as my number 23, and also Derek Williams as my number 23 as well. Yeah, it's a couple basketball guys. I'm getting in the basketball mix here. Watch out.
Basketball mix.
Yeah, Quentin Richardson, what a stud. Oh, and Trey Burke. I forgot about Trey Burke. Oh, Trey Burke is my favorite, Nick. You know why? Because that shot he hit against Kansas, because I hate Kansas.
Bow, 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 bow. I got kicked out of the house during that game.
Go Trey Burke.
The greatest college basketball player of all time.
Possibly. I'll leave it
Way
at that.
better than Leitner.
I'll leave it at that. So, let's get to the story that we are all just itching to talk about. Football is back on your television.
I'm literally watching it right now.
See?
I'm so excited.
That's why we don't have Shane's full attention.
Yeah, if I'm oddly quiet, it's because I'm watching this mediocre preseason game, and I couldn't be more excited right now.
Yeah,
Mediocre is generous.
Chase Daniel
Yeah.
already threw 2 picks. Pride of Missouri. Shout out.
Hey, and a touchdown, though.
Yeah, hey, basically, you score... Okay, Kieran, let's talk about... You told me about this idea you had for sports the other day. I want you to talk about it on here, because I thought it was a really good idea.
Okay, well, I mean, it was kind of more of a what if situation. It's what if this happened? But I was watching the Cardinals-Rockies game the other day, and it was 2-2, and each team had 5 hits. And I was like, what if scoring in all sports was like scoring in bags, or other people might call it cornhole. So you just cancel each other out. So 2-2, each team has 5 hits. It's actually 0-0, and both teams have thrown a no hitter.
I like it.
Games would go so long because it would always end up being tied and going into overtime.
Extra
Speaking
innings.
of football, though, well, okay, I was thinking for all sports.
Okay.
But speaking of football, I was gonna say this earlier, but I wanted to wait for the show. RG3 is back to how his former self, And when I say former self, I mean Cleveland RG3, because he made one super good throw where I was like, oh my God, is RG3 coming back to being an elite quarterback? And then he just launched one 45 yards over someone's head. I was like, this is the guy we remember from Cleveland. He's back.
Yeah, so am I the only one not watching the game right now?
No, I
think so.
I wasn't. I was just looking at a picture of Jacoby Brissett.
Kieran has gotten to the point where he's so ready for football.
You can stop just looking at pictures of Jacoby Brissett.
Jack Doyle, Quentin Nelson. Kieran
Quentin Nelson.
Don't get Kieran started on Quentin Nelson.
Kieran has ruined every pair of jeans he owns now, just looking at pictures of Quentin Nelson.
Let's go Colts.
Well, there's not really much to talk about in this Hall of Fame game. It's just a preseason game, and really a formality, I guess. But, I mean, it's just football to watch. We'll move on to some more relevant football talk. Urban Meyer was placed on paid administrative leave for the Ohio State Buckeyes. They kind of have a little bit, they find themselves on the hot seat there with a little bit of domestic abuse.
Yeah, turns out they are the domestic abuse university.
Yeah. Oh boy!
Add that in post-pro.
All right, I will. rim shot.
Yeah,
here.
No, not a good rim job. It's not a good look for Ohio State at all. But then again, when do they have like a good storyline? Like, when was the last time you heard like, oh, that's kind of cool, something coming out of Ohio State? Anytime you see Ohio State in the headlines, it's not a good thing.
So I'll kind of let Toby take this away. Ohio State has always really been kind of a shady school.
Well, just in their history, they've had some coaches that are more about the results than they are about building character or building, like, a team itself, Like, their most legendary coach, his most famous moment was choking a Clemson player on the sideline, Woody Hayes. Jim Tressel was kind of ushered out of Ohio. He didn't have as many bad moments. He just had some guys on his teams that were less than reputable. And Urban Meyer, since he's gotten there, and Urban Meyer had this at Florida too. So I think it's just the guys they're hiring. They're hiring good football coaches who don't care that much about anything dealing with morality or anything like that. Anything like being a good guy off the football field, I think that's just kind of the Ohio way. And that's spoken from a Michigan fan, but I agree with Shane. When you hear a story about a Buckeye player doing something, very rarely is it doing something in a constructive nature like what LeBron did for Akron, Ohio. You wouldn't hear about stuff of that nature from an Ohio State player, and that's just the way it's been. And I think Urban Meyer and the whole coaching staff kind of contribute to that. Because if you surround young people with bad role models, then they'll pick up on those tendencies, those habits, and kind of live them out themselves,
Couldn't have said it better myself.
How did this story come out? Does anyone know? I didn't hear how it got dropped. I just heard what the story was.
It started at Big Ten Media Day, didn't it?
So Zach
Smith,
Zach Smith was the wide receivers coach, and he was caught trespassing on his wife's property. He was trying to, or his ex-wife now. He was trying to get his kids to come with him instead of living with their mom. And so that trespassing thing came out, and then that's when people started to have questions about Zach Smith. Then it came out that there was the domestic abuse in the relationship that caused the split. And I guess that happened in 2015. But all of this has been covered up by Urban Meyer and the coaching staff, who said they had no knowledge of it, knew nothing of it at the media days. And it was revealed just recently that the wives texted each other, and she was like, hey, or Zach Smith's ex-wife was like, hey, I'm in an abusive relationship right now, and I'm asking Coach Meyer's help with dealing with this, maybe getting him off the staff or getting him help. And I guess Urban Meyer and his wife both kind of turned a blind eye to the proceedings. And now we've got this story.
Sheesh. Yeah, that's not good. This whole thing could have been avoided by Urban. Well, not avoided, but handled better. I'll put it that way. If at the Big Ten Media Days or whatever, he brought up the situation, said, this is what happened. I regret how I handled it. Could have handled it better and moved on instead of just maintaining to lie and lie and lie about what happened. I didn't know that this happened. Yada yada yada. It's like similar to the Joe Paterno thing. I know there's still people out there that think Joe Paterno didn't know, but there's no way that he didn't know what was going on in their facilities and with his coaching staff. So, when you're the head coach, it is your job to know everything that's going on in your organization. So, with something like this going on, there's no way in my mind he didn't know about this, especially since, like you said, the texts have been coming forth with between the two wives. This whole story unfolding. It's just astonishing to me that someone can try to lie about this to the entire country.
There were two really good images that came from this whole Urban Meyer thing. The one of the T-shirt that says "Urban Meyer knows" is one of the funniest,
that was awesome.
Most ironic T-shirts in history of T-shirts. The second one was the headline that Urban Meyer said on the NCAA basketball scandals as "If coaches know, they should be fired." Or if coaches lied, they should be fired and shouldn't coach again. And so, just irony all over the place.
Urban Liar is just digging himself deeper in a hole by past Urban Meyer, and I absolutely love it. I want one of those T-shirts so bad. You have no idea how bad I want one of those T-shirts, and there's no way they're gonna put any more into production.
Yeah, they're sold out.
Well, yeah, they're sold out now, but there's no way they're gonna make any more. They're not gonna keep selling those. Barstool or someone might, but. We might have to bleep that out. That T-shirt is just so iconic now, as the Urban Meyer knows.
Yeah, irony is one of my favorite forms of comedy, ironic comedy, and that's as best as it gets right there.
I heard
you're a huge Alanis Morissette fan.
I heard this take from these Ohio Buckeye fans that the old quote that Urban Meyer had about, coaches lying, they should be fired immediately. They said that the justification for that was they should be fired if lied to NCAA investigators. So essentially,
not just in general.
Yeah, if you cover a story up, then it's better than lying amidst an investigation. So as long as you cover it up, everything's all fine.
Which is not true.
You would
that's not true, kids.
You would think, I don't know if this will happen or not, but I hope it does. This would severely hurt their recruiting. As far as because we don't know the end of the investigation right now. So let's say hypothetically Urban Meyer keeps his job. If you're a highly sought after prospect, would you want to play for a guy like this who is dishonest? I would think this would ruin relationships with recruits from here on out. Because if he looks me now and says, yes, we really want you as a player, we want to offer you a scholarship. In the back of my head, I might be thinking he lies a lot. If he's going to lie about covering up domestic abuse, what would keep him from lying about wanting me as a player? You know what I mean? That trust between him and recruits is shattered.
I would say the one flip side, and it's unfortunate that there is a flip side to it, is that when you have a coach like that basically will allow you to get away with whatever, he's not going to suspend his players. He's been in more trouble than any of his players have really during their collegiate careers.
Yeah.
He's not going to get you in trouble. Basically, you're going to have free reign to do whatever you want. And the fact that, he is a good football coach. He wins games. That certainly helps. So I don't know if it'll hurt Ohio a whole lot. They've already started naming potential replacements for head coach, which is good. Because I want to see Urban Meyer out. I think he's been really just not good for the college game in general. Good coach, I grant you. But, I mean, the players that he sends to the league, the types of trouble that he's gotten into with the NCAA is not conducive to creating a good image for college football in general. Like Nick Saban, he sends some guys to the NFL, they don't pan out. But Nick Saban's not a guy who you hear about, breaking rules, getting into legal trouble or anything. He's just a damn good coach. Like, that's good for the college game. Urban Meyer is just not – it's just not that way with Urban Meyer.
He's not.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, with the coaches they've had at Ohio State, if you keep Urban Meyer around and keep this environment of, we'll just say, like, less than notable people, like you said with recruiting, if I'm a recruit who I know and who likes to mess around and do some things he shouldn't be doing, I would be attracted to a school like Ohio State where the coach covers things up. So you're just continuing the cycle of bringing in not good guys into an environment and like creating more bad headlines for yourself in the future.
Yeah, but as long as they're winning games, they don't care, and that's the bottom line with a school like Ohio.
That's what my point was going to be. It's going to be tough to see him fired because he has won games there, which sucks. That's just a terrible reason to keep a coach that has done so many bad things. Like, even at Florida, he didn't even do that great things. I mean, he won 2 national championships, but he's just not a very good person from what we've seen.
No, I can't wait until Ohio starts losing a few games.
Up in Florida, though, with Tebow.
Yep, got on the side.
Me too.
As soon as they start losing games, Urban Meyer's going to have another heart condition, I bet. So
we'll hit on one more topic, then we'll get to our interview with Tom Johnson, the voice of Northern Missouri. This is a big NBA headline, little NBA tea. Looks like we got a little bit of drama going in between Draymond Green and Tristan Thompson. This has actually been going on for a very long time, since the finals got over, and Draymond Green was jawing at Tristan Thompson. Now Tristan Thompson finally did something. He popped him in the mouth when he saw him outside a nightclub.
This is actually a really great story, but I want to get Kieran's take as the Warriors fan.
Yeah, and the Draymond fan. Kieran's always stood up for Draymond.
Yeah, Draymond's a stud, Everybody needs, on a team with players like Steph and Clay, when those guys were your best players before they added KD, you needed that guy to kind of like, he was the enforcer on that team. So attention was taken away from Steph and Clay. But, this is just Draymond being Draymond. News came out of about this, it was at LeBron's party. He reportedly apologized to Tristan and then got popped. Reportedly just ate the punch like the man he is. And then LeBron and KD had to separate it. But did you guys see that today Draymond was upset, not about the news that he got punched, but the news that he apologized? He was like, no, I didn't apologize. Like, he was getting all riled up about that.
Well,
Classic.
Yeah, I mean, if the stories are true, though, that he apologized, I would say it's a worse look for Draymond Green than it is for Tristan Thompson, actually, because Draymond Green started all the trash talking in Game 1 of the series. Remember, Tristan Thompson got ejected because he tried to throw a forearm into Livingston at the end of Game 1. Then at the end of the series, Tristan Thompson tries to shake Draymond's hand to congratulate him. Draymond Green says, no, I don't fuck with you. At the parade, Draymond's talking about Tristan Thompson still, like, we not cut from the same cloth and all this. So he did a whole, like, smear campaign, basically, on Tristan Thompson, basically saying, he's hiding behind the fact that they're on the court. Tristan Thompson can't find him there, He's at the parade. Nobody's going to catch Tristan Thompson there. So you actually get into an environment where Tristan Thompson could do something to stop the trash talking, and Draymond gets popped trying to apologize for stuff that he said back then. Like, if that's true, then that's a really bad look for Draymond. Kind of exposes him as a sort of a fake tough guy,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if they're
I
not
don't
cut from the same cloth, then Draymond's cloth might be used for tampons.
I don't think it's as bad as you guys think, because it would have been if he would have tried to apologize in like a public setting for something like that. And the fact that he got punched in the face and like just ate it, I think that's kind of goes to show you how much of a little big back bitch Tristan Thompson is.
What? Draymond got alphaed, man. He got
punched in the face and ate it. Just like, no, man. If you get punched in the face, if you get punched in the face and you don't get knocked out, I think that's a good look. You win that.
If you walk up to
that Boise
saying,
State
I'm
player,
sorry, yeah, and then you get socked in the face and you don't do anything back, you just walk away, you got baited.
He didn't.
He apologized. He said he didn't apologize, but he just got punched in the face. I'm going with my boy Draymond on this.
Well, he didn't. He didn't walk away either, because Tristan Thompson was going to give him that work, and then Kevin Durant and LeBron James had to break it up.
They started to fight.
But Tristan Thompson was about to work Draymond Green.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm actually happy for Tristan Thompson that he did this, because he'd been taking all of this.
Yeah, me too.
He'd been taking all of it from Draymond, and Draymond was just like jawing away. And really, what you have to do when someone's just jawing is you just have to hit him in the face, and that's what he did.
I almost forgot that Tristan Thompson had an affair because of this, because I was like, all right, go Tristan, beat up on Draymond.
Yeah.
So domestic violence, and so Shane's going double jeopardy: domestic violence and just an adulterer. Just cancel each other out.
But the thing though that hurts Tristan Thompson, I don't know if it necessarily hurts Tristan Thompson, but the news came out about the parade that they're going to throw for Tristan Thompson for punching Draymond Green in the face.
So funny.
And Draymond Green responded, "You know what? Keep the parade. Y'all ain't gonna have one for a while. I forgot y'all lost LeBron." I was like, yeesh.
That was a good one.
He said, "I'm going down. Tristan's going down. The city of Cleveland's going down."
And he's yelling timber.
Ooh, okay.
I think NBA players on Twitter are so much more fun than any other sport on Twitter.
Yeah. I don't think that's
NBA players are wild with their clapbacks and everything.
I don't know. MLB players on Twitter are pretty fun in high school.
They're problematic.
We'll go ahead and take our break here and listen to our interview with Tom Johnson. So here he is. I'm here with the voice of the Trenton Bulldogs, really the voice of Northern Missouri, Tom Johnson. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I actually got into trouble with that Trenton Bulldogs thing. I've been working a little bit with UClick TV, which is much more regional, over the summer. Did a little bit of semi-pro football and had my Twitter handle as voice of dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I got in trouble for that because it was a Chillicothe team and Trenton's big rival, and they kept saying, you announcing for the Chillicothe Swarm as the voice of the dogs is confusing, so I did change it. It's now No Mo Sports.
There we go.
It's in Northern Missouri Sports, NOMO Sports. So.
Yep, Tom Johnson here. We've been calling high school football together for 3 years now. Seems it hadn't been that long.
No, you went right from the field to the broadcast booth.
It's I pulled a Tony Romo there. Yeah, I went.
Does that make me Jim Nance?
I'd call you Jim Nance.
I get paid like Jim Nance. I'll take that.
Hey, there you go. So, Tom, we talked to a lot of media guys. We've had Carrington Harrison on the podcast. We've had Bob Fesco. When we asked him this question, what really brought you into the media industry?
Blind luck, I'd say, because I didn't do a whole lot in high school for radio.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'd say I probably would have been intimidated by the whole thought of being on the radio. But there was, and it wasn't very much, but it was kind of one of those get on the phone and talk with a local radio station about the things that are going on, bulletin board things in your school.
Right.
And it was WKLK. I think it's an AM station in Cloquet, Minnesota. And they got me to do that for my senior year. And I don't remember much about it, but that probably at least put the idea in my head that it'd be something that'd be fun. So I get to school, and I went to school at the time it was Northwestern College, which was a Christian school that has a very heavy broadcasting lean. It has Billy Graham was the president there in the 30s and 40s. and they have KTIS Radio, which is owned by the school right across the street. And so this is, if you're going to go halfway between Minneapolis and St. Paul, go straight north about 10 miles. That's where campus was. So I end up there, and you kind of get into, okay, I'm a freshman. Here are the options. And I was pretty smart, but there's a lot of majors that you can look at that completely intimidate you, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I've been there.
Like, I'm not going into any chemistry major. I'm not going to anything that, as much as I'd like to be a doctor, I don't want to be in school for 15 years so I can get my doctorate.
Right.
So I ended up going into broadcasting. I thought that would be fun. I was a sports head growing up, and we had a pretty decent basketball team. So I ended up on WVOE, which was the student station there. Voice of the Eagles, by the way, is what the VOE stands for. And I kind of ran with it. I dabbled in TV a little bit my junior and senior years. In fact, I interned at Care 11, which is a TV station, NBC affiliate in Minneapolis. That didn't go as well as I had expected, and kind of just leaned radio from that point.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. You have one of those radio voices I can remember always since growing up here in Trent, Missouri. You were one of those voices that you hear, and you just have a very radio voice.
Which is surprising because I don't know if you deal with the same thing, but for 5-6 years, even professionally, I started in Hiawatha, Kansas. There's 4-station group over there, west of St. Joe. Hiawatha, Seneca, Atchison, Falls City. You're looking, those aren't very far away. All I heard was, you're from up north, I can hear it in your voice, which I don't get that anymore.
No.
So apparently I've lost that. And I just thought, I'm just going to not have a radio voice and just have to deal with it for the rest of my career. And now I feel like, and I don't know if it is something that develops because you're confident, like 99.99% of the time, if I turn on my mic, I'm not nervous.
Right.
Now I'll say, when the Trenton Lady Bulldogs were in the state semifinals down at the Hearn Center, and I knew from living here at the time for 15 years what a big deal that was for this community.
Oh, yes.
I was nervous. I wasn't shaking in fear nervous, but I knew that what I was going to say was going to be heard by thousands of people.
Right.
So I was nervous for that one, but generally, I got a confidence in what I'm doing. And I think confidence comes across on the radio is that guy has a good radio voice.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. You said you started professionally in Hiawatha. What really started your covering high school football? Was it there?
It was there, and I don't remember my first high school football broadcast. I worked out of, at the time there was 3 stations. It was Kansaland Radio, which was the name for KNZA, which was based out of Hiawatha. Had a sports director I worked under there who kind of taught me the ropes. His name is Troy Coverdale. He's now the voice of the Northern Colorado Bears.
Oh.
Very, very good play-by-play man. But when I was hired, it was pretty much New Year's Day 1998. So it was in the middle of the basketball season. So I remember doing small town, Nemaha County, south of Nemaha County. Twin Valley League was the name of the league. Class 1, Class 2 schools in Kansas, around Seneca, Kansas.
Right.
I remember doing those games, and I remembered nothing about my first high school football broadcast.
Wow. Yeah, I think I can remember mine. Well, I mean, I was on color commentary with you. We were at Lathrop High School. That was actually the day we had to come back. You got lightning weather delay. That's one to remember, though.
We're going to Lathrop in 3 weeks and a night.
Right.
And I joke with Tucker, and it's not much of a joke. I feel like we do as many games from Lathrop High School as we do from C.F. Russell Stadium here in Trenton.
Yeah, it's been close. We've done a few games from there. It's a nice place to broadcast from.
Very nice. Well, and do you remember, it's not even an old barn that they, because an old barn describes a basketball arena more than a football stadium. Mm-hmm. You remember the old football place that Lathrop used to play at?
I don't. I really don't.
It was built on low ground in the middle of Lathrop. You got to go probably a mile and a half. You know where the new school is. Mm-hmm. If you take a left there instead of a right, where you're coming into town from 35.
Right.
If you go about a mile, there's a low spot that's just track of grass. Trenton played there, I want to say it was in 2009, and it rained so hard that I kid you not, our boys played the second half with water on the sideline up to their calves.
That's brutal.
Terrible place to broadcast from. I talked with Coach Kohlauer, who's a coach down there, I think before Chris Holt.
Yeah.
We talked every single week about how's it coming with the new school, new football field. It's really enjoyable to see what they've done there.
Yeah, it's very nice. They have great facilities there. And you said when you were growing up you were a big sports head. I myself had been very big into sports.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in Minnesota, I'm sure that What sport was your first love? Was it hockey or was it football?
You know, it's
Was
kind of funny
What's
because I haven't had this discussion with a lot of people. It was baseball. It was the Twins.
Really?
And it's really all sports. You know, I get a kick out of the people that are, even in Kansas City, I don't see a lot of this. The Royals are my team. The Chiefs can, kick rocks.
Mm-hmm.
If it had Minnesota behind the name, other than go for hockey because I had a divisional hockey team closer,
Right.
Minnesota Duluth. And even if it got to the playoffs, I'd root for the Gophers. I don't admit that many people because it's a big rivalry, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
But if it had Minnesota next to the name, I was a fan.
Yeah, I think you run into that a lot up in Minnesota because they're not the Minneapolis Twins.
Correct.
They're not the Minneapolis Wild. They're
Have
not
you
the
ever
St.
heard
Paul
the
Wild.
story of how, and because it was the first sports team to be named after a state and not a city?
Really?
Because, well, there's a natural rivalry anyway between Minneapolis and St. Paul to the point that when they were trying to decide where to put a stadium, they had to put it equidistant between the two. Down in Bloomington, which is now where the Mall of America is.
Right, yeah.
But that's where the TC on the hat comes from.
Twin Cities.
Calvin Griffith moves the Senators from Washington to Minneapolis, and this was in the era where the Giants moved to San Francisco, the Dodgers moved to Brooklyn, the Braves moved from Boston to Milwaukee. And so actually it was very, very close that the Giants were within days of moving to Minneapolis and were convinced to save the rivalry with the Dodgers, have one in Los Angeles, one in San Francisco. That's how that worked out. So, anywho, Calvin Griffith moves there, and he's going to name the team the Twin Cities Twins. Because he didn't want to name it Minneapolis, didn't want to name it St. Paul. They're Twin Cities, but they're rivals.
Right.
And I think somebody came to him in January, February of that year, 1961, and said, name it Minnesota.
Yeah.
That way you can build it regionally, and all the people that live in northern Minnesota, the Dakotas, who don't have a major league team, they're going to come. And it kind of worked out.
Yeah.
And now all the teams go with that.
I think it's really neat to see. Well, going back to high school football. You've covered high school football for what, 20-some years now?
Yeah, since the fall of 98.
Yep. You're older than me and when it comes to high school football. So what's the biggest difference that you see in high school football and in the classes, just the different classes?
Speed. It's speed, it's size. It's pretty much the same thing that you see if you're going to go college football. If you're going to say what's the difference between the Tigers and the Bearcats.
Yeah.
Bearcats are really good, but if you get a really high elite class, and I haven't seen a lot of Class 5 football. Your Blue Springs South and those boys.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just a whole different level of football.
It is.
Than even your really good Class 1 or 2 team. There's more athletes, there's more to choose from. You get second and third teamers that would be stars at a smaller
Class 2,
level.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah, and it just happens that way just because you just got more to choose from. You got more in the way of enrollment.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of these schools run into. You run into the problem with, these private schools. They're able to control their enrollment, almost sort of recruit a little bit, control what class they're in. And you see these private schools sometimes control. They're in Class 1. What's that school Hamilton's always ran into?
Mm-hmm.
They've been able to control
Valley Catholic.
Yes, they've been able to control their enrollment and just stay at Class 1 when they really have the talent to be probably compete at Class 2.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very true.
Right. Like we mentioned that you've seen a lot of high school football in your day. How do you think the game has changed?
There's a lot more. High school football used to be very much 90% of the games you go and call, it would be 5 yards in a cloud of dust. Your Wes Croy football, right?
Right.
Because Wes is old school.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Boswell's old school. They love to run the veer. So you saw a lot of that in the 90s and the 2000s. I think this kind of started, I never saw this team play in person, but you've heard the name Drew Newhart?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, quarterback of the Cameron Dragons. Cameron hasn't had a very good program for the last 50 years. But they had about 4 years where they were about as good as you can find in Northwest Missouri.
Yes, they were.
And they chucked the ball around. And that became kind of in vogue. Now you see teams that are running spread. They're running, for high school, to me, that's still crazy to this point, but they're good at it.
Oh, yeah.
And if you can get a team, I go back to, I think this was 06. It was in that era. Putnam County had a team that was really good and big and strong and farm boys, right? They're from Union.
Mm-hmm.
They run the football. And West Platte had a spread offense. And Putnam County could not stop that spread.
Yep. So
I'd take Putnam County's front seven against West Platte's front seven that night any day of the week, but if you can't stop the spread and you can't tackle guys in space, that's a whole different animal.
And I think I agree with you, too, especially when it comes to the offense. As you see, Princeton, one of them that comes to mind is that they run this pro-style spread offense.
And they get the ball into the hands of their athletes.
Yes, and that's what the spread offense does.
Yeah, and we saw that to a T last year against the Trenton Bulldogs.
Mm-hmm.
Princeton just got the ball to their athletes, and Trenton couldn't get them down to the turf often enough.
Right, and I think that's, the way football's changed is definitely, the way it's played has definitely changed, and we'll move up to your Golden Gophers. I know you're a big Minnesota fan. We're sitting in your office here, and you have
long-suffering Gopher fan, man.
You've got a Minnesota helmet here. You got Goldie Gopher over there.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think about this Gopher team?
Football?
Yes, football.
I think they're a year away, honestly, but. And I know it's not a set-in-stone fact because there's a big difference between the MAC and even the Big Ten West.
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska's still down. Wisconsin's Wisconsin. Iowa's always pretty good. But P.J. Fleck, he's doing his thing at Minnesota that he did at Western Michigan. And they got better by about 2 or 3 games every year.
Yeah.
But he got to find himself a quarterback because quarterback was awful last year. So that's the thing for me if you're going to talk to the Golden Gophers. If they have a quarterback come in and light the world on fire, great. They'll make a bowl. They'll win their 8 or 9 games. They'll be much improved. If they can't find a quarterback, they're going to struggle.
Yeah, I think that goes with really a lot of teams. And I know you and I have both talked about this. I myself have found myself more of a Minnesota fan as the more I've seen of PJ Fleck. I'm a big PJ Fleck fan. I just what do you think of the hiring there and what he's done so far?
Hey, what's the old saying? You can get Vince Lombardi to coach a team, and if they're bad, they're gonna he might get in and be average because he's that good of a coach.
Yeah.
But you don't win because you got like the greatest coach in the world. Bo Schembechler at Michigan and Woody Hayes at Ohio State, they won because they had dudes.
Mm-hmm.
They had dudes that are just better than the other dudes on the other side. If you can recruit and you can coach up your recruits, this is the whole thing. Gary Pinkel didn't get the best players every year to come to Missouri, but he coached them to where they were better than what their ranking was.
Right. Yeah.
High school. So, if PJ Fleck can prove to do that, great, because he's already improved their recruiting by leaps and bounds.
Now, keeping it in the Big Ten, what do you think about Nebraska's hiring of Scott Frost?
Love it. Love it for Husker fans. Hate it as a Gopher fan.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing with Nebraska, and this really surprises me because I remember what the Huskers were in the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
It's been hard for them, even bringing 90,000 people who bleed red into that stadium, probably the best atmosphere in college football. It's hard to get these kids to go to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah.
It's not even. It's warmer than Minneapolis. It's warmer probably than Madison and Ann Arbor and all these other towns. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just Nebraska being so rural, and I made that trip 3 weeks ago, so I know. They're not a whole lot west of Lincoln. Between Lincoln and Denver, there's a lot of barren space.
Nothing.
For whatever reason, though, it's just they kind of lost their edge, and they're not winning 11 games a year anymore. It's been hard to get those kids. But Scott Frost took, and I forgot about this, you know how ESPNU over the offseason, they replay a bunch of college football games.
Right, yeah.
So they had the Central Florida-South Florida game on, which is a great game.
Mm-hmm.
For I think it was December of last year. And I had forgotten this fact, that Central Florida under Scott Frost went from winless to unbeaten in 2 years.
Yeah.
That's the whole P.J. Fleck thing. And P.J. Fleck won at Western Michigan where you said you couldn't win. Scott Frost, he's a Husker, so he knows...
The Husker way.
Yes, exactly. And I roll my eyes at the Husker way and all that because, you win with talent.
Right.
But he's familiar with the whole program, top to bottom. If he doesn't win there, Nebraska might never win again because I don't know if there's a more perfect fit than Scott Frost for that job.
Yeah, and, one of the buddies who we do this podcast with, Shane Miller, big Huskers fan. I always joke around with him saying that they'll probably give him 3 years, and if he doesn't win more than 9 games in 3 years, they'll boot him because that's what they did to Bo Pelini.
And I will, if I know somebody and I know I can zing him a little bit, I zing fans all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as, I'll never hold it against a Nebraska guy for being a Husker fan because here's what made Nebraska fandom what it is. Yeah, and this is all due respect because I know some people from Nebraska. What else is there?
Yeah, there's nothing.
when Nebraska football is playing in the Orange Bowl or playing that big game against Oklahoma, and the entire nation's attention, sports-wise, is on little old Nebraska. Which Nebraska, if you take away Omaha and Lincoln, it's South Dakota.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty much.
There's not a whole lot there. I can understand how having a team of that dominance would create that sort of fandom. It's like Arkansas. It's like Alabama. If you don't have a pro sports team, that's your pro sports team.
Oh, yeah. And I think that Nebraska fans are almost unrivaled. You could put them up with the Alabamas and in the sense that
I agree with you.
They're so supportive of their team.
Right. But if we're talking college football, there's one team in Nebraska. There's not one team in Alabama.
Right.
There's the other team on the east that Alabama fans hate.
Yeah.
So that's a state split.
And I think Nebraska fans. I know a lot of them going up to Northwest. There's a lot of Nebraska fans up there, and sometimes you just have to take the good with the bad when it comes to those fans.
Hey, I haven't been to a game in Huskerland. I've actually been to a basketball game. I went to a Gopher Husker basketball game at the old Devaney Sports Center in '98. And I lived in Hiawatha. It's probably a 2-hour drive up there, so make the drive up there. The weather's good. Went up there, had a good time. Never been to a football game there, though.
Really?
No.
I think our plans for the fall is we're going to try to catch one Mizzou game this fall as a group, and we're going to try to go up to Lincoln and catch, because I've never been up there either. I hear it's a wonderful atmosphere.
Oh, yeah. And good people, too.
Right.
You, as I said, you can zing Nebraska people, but they're just really good, salt-of-the-earth people. I just love their football team.
Now we'll touch on Mizzou football a little bit before we round out this interview here. What do you think of the Tigers so far this year? It seems like a real big question mark.
I can't get a good read on them. I feel like the program is in this state of flux that I just don't. I root for him as hard, but I can't get any sort of read from him because Barry Odom has not proved himself to that Gary Pinkel level.
That's true.
I think because they haven't had that breakthrough season where they go, okay, they had about three years where they were getting used to the new coach, but now they're rolling and they need to beat some people that are the dudes in the SEC.
Yeah.
They play at Alabama. They got Georgia coming here. Auburn's in that group. Auburn embarrassed them last year.
Yeah, they did.
Let's be honest about that. If Missouri doesn't start winning a few of those games, they went to LSU and embarrassed themselves too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was ugly. If they can't beat those teams, they're just going to be just another average team in the SEC.
Yeah, middle of the road.
And unfortunately, with the Mizzou fan base, it's give me a reason to come.
Right.
And if you don't give me a reason to come, I'm not going to come. Which I understand completely because we live 2.5 hours from Columbia.
Oh, right.
That's a long Saturday.
Yeah, it is.
That's a long way to go down there and back.
It's in the middle of the state, too, up here in North Missouri. It's not a fun drive to make on a Saturday morning.
No, I've done both ways, and I know going through Macon is about 3 miles shorter, maybe 3 minutes shorter, just to make it a little bit different. I've gone through Marshall before, too.
Yeah. One of our Kieran Britton is from Marshall, Missouri. It's a great little town there. They haven't had the high school football success that they've had in the past.
True.
They're kind of struggling on the football side. Now, Tom, you got a new podcast out. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
It's called Post Game Parables. I just got to the point, and I think this is just, sometimes you get opportunities in small market radio, and sometimes the radio station is what it is, and people like it. You get an older audience in it.
Yep.
So trying to get something new is a little bit more difficult. But other than dog bites in the fall, which is fun, but it does have its challenges. We won't go into all the challenges of hosting it because, that's
Right.
a topic for another discussion, probably an off-the-air discussion. But I haven't had a whole lot of opportunities to just host a show.
Yeah.
Just host a show. Something new. And as we talked about, too, if I host a show and have some cool guests on there, it's not like I can't use that for the radio station either.
Right,
There's
you're
gonna be
right.
some cross-promotion on that. So, yeah. Called... I'm going to have to remember the name again, Post Game Parables. You can find it on SoundCloud.
Yep.
And Tucker was my first guest. Tomorrow, I still haven't put the invite for any of the girls out. I'm thinking maybe I'll just let them enjoy the weekend, not think about sports, because it is
Right.
officially I'm going to give the air quotes here, dead period for high school sports at Trenton High School. But I do want to get more student athletes on than I have in the past, because in the past I've been pretty... because parents get involved, right?
Right,
You didn't
yeah.
talk to my kid.
Yeah.
All that.
Political.
Coaches are
Political.
nodding their head to say, I know it. But I would like to get more student athletes on.
Yeah, that'd be
And
neat.
that senior class at Trenton High School, girls-wise, phenomenal student athletes, and all really nice to talk to too. So probably get them on, but I'm going to talk with Coach Cowling tomorrow.
Yep. Last question I got for you.
Fire away.
Which conference do you think's better, SEC or Big Ten?
Ooh, lately I think it's the Big Ten. Now, traditionally, probably the SEC. The SEC has been hurt the last couple of years by Ole Miss has fallen off. Mizzou hadn't been what Mizzou is. Everybody thinks every year that Arkansas is going to be something, and they never are.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Texas A&M hasn't lit the world on fire yet. Now, Jimbo Fisher down there is...
That'll be an interesting fit. I think it'll be good.
And that's one of those Scott Frost deals where if Jimbo Fisher can't challenge Alabama in the West, then I don't know what A&M can do.
Right.
You know, that's just Alabama's then until Saban retires. I think it's the Big Ten, but I think it's so close that if you just get a couple of teams that are your run-of-the-mill middle teams that are tough, it changes for me from year to year.
Right.
Because I think the SEC has slipped because last year it was Alabama, it was Georgia, and then it was a bunch of not very good teams.
Yeah.
I don't think Missouri was a great team last year, and they won 6 in a row.
Yeah, they had that stretch where they didn't play anybody over 500.
Yeah, and this also has worked to Missouri's way, too, and I've heard this criticism, and it has some merit behind it. Missouri came in, and they won the East twice in a row. I don't think you can take that away from them. But the Volunteers weren't the Volunteers, and the Gators weren't the Gators.
Right.
And the Bulldogs weren't the Bulldogs.
Right.
I think the Bulldogs are getting back to being what the Bulldogs were when Herschel Walker was there.
Yeah, they'll be good.
Tennessee and Florida that's where the whole strength of the SEC comes from. You got the big three in the East, and then South Carolina, who's good every once in a while. If they're not good, and if the West is Alabama and Auburn playing in the Iron Bowl to decide who goes to Atlanta, it's not a very good conference.
Right. I agree with you. Tom, thanks for joining me. Make sure you check out his podcast, Post Game Parables, on SoundCloud. We will post that link there. Thank you, Tom. Big thanks to Tom Johnson for coming on the podcast and talking. Make sure you go check out his podcast, Post Game Parables. You can find that on SoundCloud. We'll post a link in our description. We'll move on to our next topic, and it's the Mets. They are bad.
Yikes. So bad. Like, this is the best argument for relegation in baseball ever. Because they've been so bad just consistently for so long, despite that 1 year they made it to the World Series. Other than that, I can't remember outside of 1986 when they had that crazy Mets team, like a good Mets team.
So what we're actually referencing here is the Mets got absolutely pummeled by the Washington Nationals 25-4. That's not a baseball score. Let's be honest here. So this was one of the worst beatings of all time.
Oh, easily, yeah. I looked it up because I thought this might be a record as like most amount of runs scored in a single game. It's not. In 1897, which I didn't even know there was baseball that long ago, it seems like not even a real year. It was so long ago. The Chicago Colts, now the Chicago Cubs, once beat the Louisville Colonels 36-0. They 36-pieced them in baseball. That would be an ass-whooping in football, let alone a baseball game where you have to score one run at a time, not 6 or 7 at a time. Absolutely absurd. Still doesn't take away, though, that the Mets gave up 25 runs in a single game. It averaged out, I saw, to 1 run every 9 pitches. That's embarrassing.
That's a good stat.
It is a good stat.
I like that stat.
Yeah. But as a major league team, like you're playing at the highest level of competition there is for baseball in the world, how the hell do you give up 25 runs in one game? It just does not make sense to me. That's the only way.
I think that just goes to show you how good Jacob deGrom is, that he has the lowest ERA in baseball, and when he's not on the mound, they give up 25 runs.
They need him so bad.
Like, is there any way to just have him pitch every day, just blow out his arm, and then just
one good week, and then he's crap for the rest of the season.
I believe Tucker shared a statistic about DeGrom leading the majors and ERA, and next to it showed his record with an asterisk that said does not lead the majors. He is 5-6 with the best record in baseball, or best ERA in baseball.
Yeah, not the best record in baseball.
Yeah, not the best record. Best ERA though.
And to think that this team is hot garbage, but with a record like that, you should be rebuilding at the trade deadline. Which, if you want to know more about the trade deadline, head on over to Turn 2 podcast. But the owner said, we're not trading DeGrom or Syndergaard. We can compete next year. Like, no, you can't. You guys are garbage.
You guys
but didn't you call them winning the World Series after Game 1?
Yeah, Overreaction Monday.
Yeah, they were 11-1 at the start
Everyone
of the
was
season.
like, oh, the Mets might be real this year. The Mets looked pretty good in this first game, and then from then on out, someone lit the dumpster on fire again, and they've been back to their old selves.
Hey, I strictly go who's going to represent the National League and win the World Series by who's beat the Cardinals this year. And a lot of teams have. So, like, that way of making an assumption, it's probably right, you know?
Probably. Speaking of that,
though.
how does it feel, Kieran, knowing that the Chicago Cubs, your most hated team, used to be called the Colts, which is one of your favorite teams?
You know, sometimes even bad situations have, like, a little, like, positivity in them.
Also, is it weird that Chicago is, like, kind of obsessed with baby animals?
Bears aren't... They have bears.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I think they should have just named all of their sports teams after, like, different ages of bears. So, like,
Papa Bear, Mama Bear, Baby Bear.
Like a Bruin, isn't that another name for a cub?
That's not.
Or is that, like, younger than a cub? So, like, rename the Bulls the Bruins, and then the Cubs, rename the White Sox, like, I don't know. Something, since they're kind of, like, not related, like, we'll just name them, like, something like the Polar Bears, something, like, still related to bears.
So I just did a quick Google search. A Bruin is a bear, especially in children's fables, and it's Dutch for brown, and is used in English as a folk term for a brown bear. Learn something new
you
every
could just
day.
go black bear, grizzly bear, polar bear, panda bear. Just all the four made... Oh, and the Blackhawks suck.
Cucumber.
Cucumber.
If you want to learn more about the trade deadline deals, head on over to the Turn 2 podcast, where KB and I wrapped up the MLB trade deadline. We hit almost all the bases, I'd say.
We also got off on a couple tangents in the middle. That's why it's one of the longest podcasts we've ever had.
Yeah, it's...
By the way, I liked your little baseball pun there. Hit all the bases.
Yep, thanks. I was hoping that wasn't going to go unnoticed. I'm glad it did.
You're welcome.
So, KB and I in that podcast talk about 2011 season for a little bit. A couple good teams, and then we talk about the Brewers and the past of the Brewers. So make sure you give it a listen. We get off of trades just for about 15 minutes. Probably wasn't that long. But make sure you go check it out. If you like baseball, you'll like to listen to us talk about it, because we think we're pretty good at talking about baseball.
I think you're pretty good, too.
Well, thank you. Do you fellas have any final thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm going back to this day in sports history. Still can't decide if I'm going to do the day we record or the day this comes out. So for now, I'm doing both, because there's some pretty interesting ones on both today. But for this day in history, August 2nd, 1973, future Baseball Hall of Fame third baseman George Brett hits his first MLB hit on debut for the Kansas City Royals in a 3-1 win over the Chicago White Sox. So that's pretty neat. Coming from 75% Royals fans over here. Big George Brett podcast.
They played the White Sox today, too. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah,
kind of neat.
That is wild. Hey, so George Brett, if you're listening, we would love to talk to you about this hit if you remember it. So hit us up.
Yep.
And then when this episode airs, August 3rd, 1960, the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Toronto Argonauts who are a CFL team, 43-16 in an exhibition game at CNE Stadium in Toronto. So America invaded Canada, beat the shit out of them, and got out. So suck on that, Canada.
Just like the Canadian-American War.
Did they play with CFL rules, or did they play with NFL rules?
The website I was at did not specify, so I don't know.
Because that would be interesting. They played with CFL rules. Imagine Antonio Brown getting a running start and then having to defend him.
Well, in 1960, I don't think Antonio Brown was born, so I think they would be able to cover him.
Well, I'm saying this, yeah. But, like, nowadays...
So, yeah, I see what you're saying. That would be wild. He would be impossible to cover.
KB, what's your final thought?
My final thought is about one of my favorite Cardinals of all time, Mr. Rick Ankiel. He's got a really interesting story. Basically, he was drafted in 97. He was one of the best high schoolers coming out of the draft. Got drafted in 97 in the second round by the Cardinals. Tore up the minors. Got called up in 1999. His rookie year was 2000. He finished second in voting for the Rookie of the Year. He struck out 194 in 175 innings. So he was just tearing it up. But in the postseason that year, he came down with something called the yips, which is layman's term for you just start overthinking something that's really simple to you. So for baseball, it happened. He pitched game 1 of the NLDS, got the yips. He basically forgot how to throw a baseball So he threw a bunch of wild pitches, and he fell out of the league for a couple years. But he came back as an outfielder, had a healthy career for the Cardinals, Royals, Rays, basically around the league from 2007 to 2013, and he's trying to make a comeback into the league. So a video came out last night of him pitching, where like I said, from 2007 to 2013, when he kind of jumped around the league, he transitioned to outfield and he played center field. And it's interesting to think about all the overthinking he was doing, because he couldn't throw a strike from the pitcher's mound, but from center field he was gunning runners out all day. But he's trying to make a comeback. In the majors, he plays in a league where a bunch of retired baseball players play, I guess. People like Johnny Damon playing it, just players of that sort. And he struck out a batter last night. So he said he would be interested in making a comeback. So I'm rooting for him.
A pretty neat story. Toby, do you have something you want to add?
Yep, my final take, also a comeback story, kind of combining Shane and Kieran's, because I've got a CFL comeback. Johnny Manziel will make his CFL debut, start tonight for the Montreal Alouettes against the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who are actually his former team, and he was there for, half a season? And then the Tiger Cats were like, yeah, we like Jeremiah Masoli better. And I went to the numbers to find out a little bit about CFL. Montreal so far this year has played 4 different quarterbacks through 5 games.
Ooh.
Nice.
And the Hamilton Tiger Cats have only played Masoli, who has more interceptions than touchdowns, but refused to play anybody else.
That's what you want from your ownership. Just stay the same course forever and never change.
That's probably why these 2 teams that are meeting up are the worst team and tied for second worst team in the league, respectively. So that should be a barn burner tonight, ESPN2. I'd say we all check it out, Hopefully Texas A&M Johnny Manziel makes an appearance.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
God, what if he runs out in his Texas A&M jersey and everything? That'd be sweet.
He's like, crap.
It's like a jersey where you can't hit the quarterback, so he's just
no contact,
avoiding everybody. Like,
See,
nope, can't
I've
hit
always
him with a
thought,
different
why don't
jersey.
quarterbacks just wear those in games? They'll never get sacked.
That's true. Good thought. My final thought is that there's a lot of exciting stuff happening here at Nosebleed Knowledge. We'll have 2 to 3 new blogs coming out for sure. We know we'll have 2. I don't know if you want to call them they're blogs. Shane will have every Husker fan's dream in the Big Red Review coming up on Sundays is when you'll usually have your post, correct, Shane?
Yep.
So Sundays you'll have recaps of the games. Shane will also have previews there. Yeah, if you're a Huskers fan, make sure you check that out. Shane, you'll also have Chalk Talk, which will come out on Mondays, talking about pretty much like a one big thing of the football, of the recapping that week in football. Along with all that football content, we'll also hopefully have the return of First and 10 with Toby and Shane. Well, they will talk all things football. They'll talk college football. They'll talk NFL football. Maybe mix in some high school football. Who knows? It's just going to be about football.
That we will. I gotta say, pretty disappointed that nobody has donated $7,000 to either Toby or I so we can stop working and just start podcasting First and 10. But regardless, we will bring it back once we get back to Maryville this football season.
And Kieran Brennan will have a start of his new blog. We're not sure when it's going to come out. It's going to come out when Kieran feels like it. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Whenever Kieran feels like it, it's going to be KB Corner with Kieran Brennan.
I'm excited. I like to write blogs sometimes, so let's do it.
You sound stoked.
That intensity. You will not find that
is tangible.
You will not find that intensity anywhere else, folks. I swear. That is
the first 5 blogs will be about Jacoby Brissett. I'm just saying.
Hey, and that's
just
okay.
Pictures of him.
It's KB's Corner. You can do anything you want in KB's Corner. Anything else, fellas?
God, I love football.
Football is back. For the boys, KB, Kieran Brennan, Toby Todd, and Shane Miller, I'm Tucker Franklin. Thanks for tuning in to the 23rd edition of Nosebleed Radio. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at NosebleedSnow, like us on Facebook, Nosebleed Knowledge, and we'll catch you guys on the flip. We'll see ya.